my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have read some books the last week that I am very excited to talk about. It is finally cooling off here and it's not so hot, which is great. And I have been working on my knitting project, so I'm getting so close to the end of the back. Oh, it's so long looking. So I just have like this much more, and then I can shape the shoulders and be done. It's supposed to be a little oversized, but this is looking huge. So I am getting so close to the end of this part, and then I have to do the whole thing all over again for the front. So this is definitely a couple months project. As you can see, I am wearing my channel shirt today, and I am having a hard time sitting still. So I think we are going to be bouncing around to different rooms in my house. So let's jump in to what I have read this last week. Okay, so right now I am in the guest room that I just redecorated. This is my favorite peel and stick wallpaper, and I got some curtains, and I think it turned out okay. I put up a little shelf in here. I'm getting some pillow covers, and I just wanted to make this look kind of put together, and I think the peel and stick wallpaper does a lot for a plain, boring room, and it's easy to remove if I change my mind. So this has been a fun project and what I've been working on lately, but I'll sit here for this next book. So the book I want to talk about is Eddie Winston is Looking for Love by Marianne Cronin, and this was a recommendation from Tiffany at Towering TBR, so make sure to check out her channel. And I think she recommended this book when I was looking for something light and wholesome and life-affirming to read, and that is exactly what you get with this book. So this book really is exploring the friendship between a 90-year-old man and a troubled woman who has just lost the love of her life. And they meet when the woman is dropping off some of her boyfriend's things to be donated after his death. They get brought together when the woman, Bella, finds out that Eddie has never been kissed at 90 years old. And she decides to make it her mission to find him someone to fall in love with. And in the process, it's helping her deal with her grief. This book is such a sweet book about love and kindness and friendship, and I had a great time. Is this book going to end up being something so meaningful that it has changed my life or whatever? No, not really, but it was solid and enjoyable, and I was just really happy that I read it. If you need something that is just light and fluffy and life-affirming, this book is it. This book is great. This is just a fun, exciting read where you just root for all the characters. There is that slight little bit of, come on, can't people just communicate better? Can't people just deal with their problems better? But I don't think that really bogged down the story. I think it was just really heartfelt and sweet. So now I am in front of my daughter's bookshelves, and if you can tell, there are even some empty spaces. We just bought another large bookshelf, and so I'm sure that these will all be filled in soon, but it's nice to have space for a minute, because for a while we had our bookshelves and then some stacks of books next to the bookshelves. Now we have all this extra space, at least for a minute. I love how this little library is turning out. It's more of a hallway, it's like the stair landing, but I love how it's turning out, and eventually I would love to just build in bookshelves and have them ceiling to floor. But for now, an extra bookshelf is exactly what we needed. Now, this next book was a recommendation from the channel Ashley Hart's Reading, and this is A Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell. And this is a very readable book. The description says, back in high school, everybody thought Shiloh and Carrie would end up together. Everybody but Shiloh and Carrie. They were just friends, best friends, allies. They spent entire summers sitting on Shiloh's porch steps dreaming about the future. They were both going to get out of North Omaha. Shiloh would go to college and become an actress, and Carrie would join the Navy. They promised each other that their friendship would never change. Well, Shiloh did go to college and Carrie did join the Navy, and yet somehow everything changed. Now Shiloh's 33 and it's been 14 years since she talked to Carrie. She's been married and divorced, she has 2 kids, and she's back living in the same house she grew up in. Her life is nothing like she planned. When she's invited to an old friend's wedding, all Shiloh can think about is whether Carrie will be there, and whether she hopes he will be. Would Carrie even want to talk to her after everything? The answer is yes, and yes, and yes. Slow Dance is the story of 2 kids who fell in love before they knew enough about love to recognize it. 2 friends who lost everything. 2 adults who just feel lost. It is the story of Shiloh and Carrie, who everyone thought would end up together, trying to find their way back to the start. And this has its moments of being kind of cute but also just relied on two people not talking to each other to the extent that it did really bother me, unlike the last book I talked about. So this one, it was okay. I think that the writing makes it fun and you kind of buy into things, but at the same time, you just want to shake both of the characters and say, what is your problem? Communicate. And I don't know if it worked super well for me. I am pretty picky about my romances because I find miscommunication to be a really frustrating trope, and I do think this kind of relied on it. It wasn't really that uncomfortable miscommunication where they're believing lies that their friends told each other and it's all gossip and that kind of thing, but it was just failure to communicate how they were feeling. And I understand that the book was supposed to be that process of learning how to communicate those things, but I also just found it frustrating that it took them so long to be able to say how they felt to each other, which I understand is the point of the book. The point of the book is them getting to the point where they could express their feelings, but I did find it frustrating to get through. If you like that kind of inner work and the failure to communicate and getting over those hurdles, and you like that in a romance, I think you will like this one. Because it is cute, it is fine. I just think that if that bothers you and you feel really annoyed by people unable to express themselves, this book is going to bother you. Okay, so now I'm back in the living area, sitting next to my new end table that I finally found because we haven't had an end table in this room the entire time we've lived here. And eventually, this is for a lamp. But I don't know about you, but I find lamps generally to be kind of ugly. And so I'm just gonna look for a long time until I find something that I want to put here. So right now, it's some of my favorite ceramics, and I made this one. This next book hardly needs an introduction because I decided to reread Dracula. And I have not read Dracula since high school, and I loved it. I didn't read it as a school assignment. I read it because I thought it seemed cool and I loved all the creepy details in it. And I remember loving this book. And so I wanted to reread it. And I am glad that I did. I think there is a reason that this book has remained one of those horror classics because it has some of that imagery that is so classic to the genre. You get the great imagery of rats swarming, of blood sucking. You get that kind of really classic supernatural horror setup. And I love how it starts out with this man who goes out to Transylvania and stays in Dracula's castle. And you get the creepy things in there, and it does feel very intense, but there is still a place to increase the stakes, increase the creepiness. The build was just really great in this book. So I really know why this book is a classic. But of course, reading it through a modern lens, there are some things that are going to bother me a little bit. So of course, there is the treatment of women throughout this book. They're very much put up on a pedestal and shown as these amazing, wonderful people who can do no wrong. I almost was confused going through the book if the author was writing from the perspective of the time about women, or if the author was almost making a commentary about how women are treated during the time. Was it playing into society's expectations, or was it subtly subverting them? Because the men in this book are really trying to protect the women from what is going on, and they don't want to tell them, and they don't want to involve them in these scary, horrible things. But it's almost ironic that the women are the ones who are being targeted and who have the actual interactions with the vampire close up and have some of the more disturbing encounters in this book. And so is this a bit of a commentary that trying to keep women away from danger actually is causing more harm, and they're the ones that are exposed to more horrors anyway? Or was the author not thinking that deeply about it? I don't know, but I did think it was a little bit interesting to see the centrality of the women in this book, but also to see how they were almost caricatures of what women are. But I also think that was kind of true for the men in this book. Every single man in this book is valiant and courageous and brave. And you don't get cowardly men, you don't get wishy-washy men, you don't get men that are looking the other way. Everyone in this book is trying to do the right thing and is so brave and valiant. And it's almost ridiculous. I was just waiting for someone to have a little bit more of character depth, a little bit of a moment of saying, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I'm not sure if this is the best idea. No. They were all ready to jump into everything. And so that was a little bit funny because I do think it's almost a harmful trope where the only monstrous men and women in this book were the literal monsters. It's very much that, oh, well, the darkness doesn't come from us because all us people are so wonderful. The darkness comes from these external evil forces and has nothing to do with our own decisions. And I don't love that in a supernatural plot. I think it's important to reflect some of the realities of human existence and that the real evils often come from within and don't come from these external monstrous forces. And I am a little critical of that looking back. Also, the character of Van Helsing, what is he? I mean, he just shows up and happens to know everything important for the plot. How? Why? Where did he come from? He's just thrown in there. And having the old kindly professor show up and suddenly know all the details and all the correct ways to get rid of vampires just feels kind of stupid. But those are me looking at it critically, because overall I see why this book is a classic. It definitely has that really great imagery, and I had so much fun reading it, and I see why I liked it as a high school student. I just can also see a few things that to a modern reader might seem a little off. Okay, now I'm sitting on a chair. So this next book has been on and off of my TBR for a long time. And the reason is that I would listen to one review that would be so glowing and say it's their favorite book that they have ever read. Then I would hear another review that would say, I hated this book, it was awful, and I just kept putting it on and off of my TBR, and I decided, you know what, I just need to read this book and see what it's all about. And it's been a while, the hype has died down, but I finally picked up Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. The description says, chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there is no such thing as an average woman. But it's the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute takes a very unscientific view of equality, except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind, true chemistry results. But like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show, Supper at 6. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking, combine 1 tablespoon acetic acid with a pinch of sodium chloride, proves revolutionary. But as her following grows, not everyone is happy, because as it turns out, Elizabeth Zott isn't just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. I found this book to be super readable, enjoyable. You root for the characters in this book, which is great. That's what you want. I had a good time getting through this book, and I got through it quickly. It had a very solid plot. There were lots of really good things in this. I tried to bring up some very important issues about women and their choices in their lives and their opportunities, and I thought that those are very important things to explore. But it is a little bit basic in its feminism, a little bit of that, hoorah, women can do whatever they want in life and men should stop stopping them. And so I did find that that was a little bit basic, and some of it was a little on the predictable side. I wasn't too shocked at any of the events that happened in this book. Even though there were a few twists and turns, I did feel like it was a pretty standard, predictable sort of plot. I think one of my things is I grew up with my father, who is a chemist. I have met many chemists, and the chemists portrayed in this book were not like any of the chemists that I have known. Now, does that mean that they don't exist? No, that does not mean that. Does that mean that that wasn't exactly how chemistry labs were in the 1960s? No, I'm I do not have experience in chemistry labs in the 1960s, but you know what? Neither does Bonnie Garmus. I don't know if her portrayals of the chemists and the chemistry was very accurate at all times. I also think that the author really put that, oh yes, if you believe in science, you can't believe in God. And I think it's fine to have her main character be an atheist and really feel like her understanding of science has brought her away from any belief in a God. That is so fine. But I feel like the book was implying that all chemists who understand science cannot believe in God, and I know that's not true. I know chemists. My father believes in God and is a chemist, and I don't think that that needs to be so mutually exclusive. Now, I think for the character Elizabeth Zott, it makes a lot of sense, but the implication that it's all the chemists, and if they knew better, of course they wouldn't believe, just felt a little far-reaching. And so I liked this book. I had a great time reading it. I enjoyed every minute of it, honestly. It was just when I got to the end, I thought, I don't know if that did everything that it meant to do, and I don't know if the author had enough expertise to accurately portray some of the characters that she was trying to portray. Okay, so I have to go walk down to pick up my girls from school right now, but if you've gotten through this video, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts on any of these books, let me know in the comments down below. And I do have a request. If anyone is interested in doing a buddy read in October, I think I want to continue on the classic Halloween novel train and read Frankenstein. So if anyone would like to read that with me in the month of October, let me know. Send me a message on Instagram. I usually just use Instagram for messaging, so send me a message on Instagram, and I would love to do a buddy read on that. That would be a lot of fun. So anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.